Okay, so this is part 2 of my 7-month situationship abuse story. I'm just gonna get straight into it because this is gonna be a long one. So here we are with part 2 of the story. We are now in 2025 and things really escalated from this point onwards. Just a warning, this part will be significantly longer than part 1 because there is a lot more to cover. New Year's Day, my cousin was in town, so I went and spent a couple of hours with her before texting X again. Do you want me to come back? He said that it was up to me and to bring a bottle of Coke if I was coming back. So I did go back and I stayed over once again. At this point, I was spending more time at his house than I was at my own house. And I realised that my sleep was better at his house than mine. Okay, so normally when I'm sleeping, I tend to toss and turn, I kick in my sleep, I have night terrors, things like that. But actually one morning I woke up and I asked him, I was like, did I do anything in my sleep? And he's like, no, I hardly felt you. You hardly moved. I'm like, whoa, that is saying something, because like normally when I'm with other people, they're complaining the next morning that I was like kicking and, you know, all this different shit. But yeah, so I didn't move. So I was like, oh, right. That must mean something, right? And then we get to the 3rd of January, which was a Friday. I spend most of my afternoon with my friends, going to KFC with one friend, and then heading over to my best friend's house for some drinks. While I was there, X was messaging me and I could tell something was up with him. So I went into the bedroom and I video called him to check on him. He told me not to worry about him and, quote, if things get worse, I'll come to my best friend's house. I thought he wasn't actually going to, so I just said, okay, and he hung up the phone call. I was sitting in the lounge room with my best friend, her partner, and her partner's friends, when about 15 minutes after hanging up the phone, I heard the door knock. My best friend's partner got up to answer the door, and I heard X's voice coming from the hallway as he opened the door. Her partner looked at us like, what the fuck? And X just walked in and sat down beside me. Now, if you watch part 1, remember the fact that I said to remember? He knew what building she lived in, but didn't know the number. I still wonder to this day, how the fuck did he know which unit we were in? It's not easy to find if you don't know the number, and yet he automatically knew what number we were in. Yeah, that is still something I question to this day. I'm like, how the fuck did he know where we were? I've got no idea. What was I? We began to drink together and we began talking about really touchy subjects to do with the relationship between me and X. Because my best friend started asking him about it, you know. I don't remember exactly what was said, but it got to the point where I excused myself from the table and went into the bedroom in tears. I was later told by my best friend that when I excused myself, she'd started asking him about what our relationship was. See, my best friend has no reason to lie to me, so I believe her when she tells me what he said to her. X had told her that the only problem was the age difference. He was 29 at the time and I was 19, nearly 20 at the time. He had then told her that after I turned 20, he would go further with me. I was turning 20 later that month, so my best friend let it go. Yeah, that's what apparently he said, so I don't know. I came back to the table and he put his hand to my forehead and says, my best friend's name, can you get some cold water because she's burning up again? As she's grabbing the water, I got really angry because he had just made me upset and now he's taking care of me again. Do you kind of see the mind games and all that? She poured the water over my head to try and cool me down, and her partner's friends were getting quite agitated with how X was acting towards me. Yeah, her ex-partner's friends were like, we don't like this guy. They still don't. I was so fed up that I said I was going to drive myself home. Both ex and my best friend were like, you are not driving home in this state. So at this point, I'd had like 6 drinks and I was drunk. And I was yeah. I was like, you can't fucking stop me. And I grabbed my keys. They literally had to wrestle the car keys from me to stop me from driving home drunk. That's how upset I was. I was like, I'm gonna drive myself home. I don't care. My best friend told me to leave my car where it was. An ex piped up saying, I will walk you home. I lived not too far away and it was 2 in the morning by this point. I was walking barefoot down the road ahead of ex and he yells out to me, offering to give me a piggyback. I drunkenly yell back, I have balls. I can handle walking barefoot down the street. It's at this point he snaps at me. I can't remember exactly what was said, but I do remember that we stopped in the middle of the street and were full on arguing in the middle of the street in the middle of the night. I believe it was an argument about his ex-partners, and that was when he told me all the information that I currently know about his ex-partners. Eventually we stopped arguing and he put his arm around me as we were walking back to my house. He said that he was going to get a taxi home, and I told him not to waste his money on a taxi and to come inside. The minute we get inside my house, he makes a beeline for my fridge and starts commenting about what I had in my fridge at the time. I was like, you don't do that, mate. No, that's just rude. I'm like, no. He said he was going to sleep on the couch, but I knew my couch wasn't that comfortable, so I said that he could sleep with me in my bed. We made our way upstairs and I take my pajamas into the bathroom so I could get changed. As I'm halfway through getting changed, the door creaks open slightly and I'm like, oi, I'm still getting changed. An object that I will not say the name of, because I'm like, yeah, comes flying through the door and lands on the bathroom floor next to my feet. I'm shocked and I hear his voice come through the door. Found it. So yes, while I was changing in the bathroom, he had gone into my bedroom and started going through my drawers. In the times that I've been alone at his house, I've never gone through his things. But the first time he's in my house, he thinks it's okay to go through my drawers. We get ready for bed and he literally claims his side of the bed. The next night was a bit of a mindfuck, to be honest. I drove him back to his house and I stayed for a few hours. After a while, he made a comment about wanting some time to himself, so I took that as my cue to leave. As I grab my keys to leave, his head snaps to me and he's like, you can take the bed, I'll take the couch tonight. I look at him with my eyebrows raised. Hold on, you just insinuated that you wanted me to leave. Do you want me to leave or do you want me to stay? He's like, it's up to you. I got so annoyed that I snapped back. No, that's not what I asked. Do you want me to leave or do you want me to stay? He once again said that it was up to me, and I was just so that I stood up and said, fine, I'm leaving my cigarette pouch and my phone. I've got to go back to my house and grab some things. I left and came back. Remember how he said he was going to take the couch? I wasn't going to fight him on it, so I just went into the bedroom to settle down. Next thing, he walks in and throws his pillows onto the bed and settles in next to me again. The mixed signals be flying, I swear. So like he had just told me that he wanted me to leave. Then, yeah, it was like, what like, I was so annoyed, like, I'm not even joking. I was so fucking pissed. We spent most of the next day together again, as per usual. Fast forward to the 11th and I went to his house again. This time his brother called and I got introduced to his brother over FaceTime. His brother heard me laughing in the background of the call and was asking who I was. He and his wife didn't believe X when he told them that I was just a friend. They started talking about some really dark topics while on the phone call, and I became quite emotional because what they were talking about reminded me of my childhood. When X hung up the phone, he grabbed my hand and told me to calm down. That night, I told him details about my traumatic childhood, and he told me about his, so I thought that bonded us further. After that, I started helping him with buying his phone data, and if he couldn't leave work to go to lunch, he'd give me money to go and get his lunch order. By the 24th, he would text me and wanted to go lapping in my car with me, ending up with me staying at his house again. The 26th, we were lapping again and ended up going out with all my different friends. We did burnouts and races with 2 of my friends, and then went up to the hill with 2 other friends. We were up there for hours just talking. There was one strange interaction though while we were up there. I was talking to one of my friends privately, and she was telling me how her period was late. And I whispered to her that mine was late too. And I didn't know why. Because see, at this point, he and I had never slept together. Ever. Like, yes, we slept in the same bed, but we never slept together, you know. So I was like, why is my period late? Like, I don't understand why. You know. She then yelled out to the boys that my period was late, and the look on X's face was confusing. He kind of looked scared in a way, but it's like, why would he be scared? We hadn't been intimate by that point, so why did he look so worried? I don't know. We then got into my guy friend's ute and went off-roading for 2 hours. I pretended to fall asleep as we got closer to my house, and I ended up staying at his house that night. Again. So my birthday was the 28th, and I made a request. The only thing I wanted for my birthday was to wake up next to him. That's all I wanted. I was messaging and tried to call him, but I got no answer. I was so upset, I drove past his house to see, and his ute was parked in the driveway, and that made me even angrier. At work that day, he walks in with this big grin on his face, and he walks up to my window. Good morning and happy birthday. I was still so angry at him that I just turned my head away from him and gave him the silent treatment for the rest of the day. Yeah, I was so angry. I was like, dude, really? Another mechanic came up to my window and was like, what's going on with you two today? And I'm like, why? And he said, because X seems really angry about something. So I explained the situation to him, and he sympathized with me, saying that if I didn't do something for my missus, she'd do the exact same thing you're doing. I don't blame you. Later that afternoon, he told me why he didn't answer his phone, which I now know was a bullshit excuse, honestly. And when I asked him why his ute was at his house, he turned it around on me, being like, how did you know my ute was at home? Yeah. His excuses sound like such bullshit now. But at the time, I felt so bad for accusing him of not caring about me that I just apologized for giving him the silent treatment all day. But he didn't even want to see me the night of my actual birthday, so I just sat in my lounge room crying and drinking. Yeah. Yeah. And also, this other mechanic that I was talking to, there was also another interaction that I actually forgot to write down. I was like cleaning the doors or something, and I'm trying to remember exactly like what happened. And they came up to like get some water from the cooler or something when I was like cleaning the things or whatever. And he walked up and he was saying something about being batshit crazy, something like that. And I turned and I was like, I know you're batshit crazy, but I love it, you know. And then, you know, he and this other mechanic like turned and walked away. And then the other mechanic came to me later and he's like, do you know what X said to me after you said that? And I'm like, no, what did he say? And he's like, he said, oh, I know she's batshit crazy, but goddamn, I love that woman. I'm like, wait, he said he loved me? Wait, what? And then I questioned X about it later, and knowing how much of a liar he is now, I'm like, because he said that he never said that, and that the other mechanic was lying to me. But knowing how much of a liar X is now, I'm like, did he actually say that but didn't want to tell me? Or, like, I'm so confused, like, ugh, you know? But anyway, me and my best friend started planning for a camping trip for my birthday weekend. When I told X, he said that he would tag along with whatever me and my friends were doing. He told me that his ex-partner had turned him off camping, but he was willing to go for me. I'll get back to that in a second. A day before we went, me and X were out lapping again when we happened to see my ex-best friend, and she was driving around with one of my current friends. X levered himself out of my window and started waving to them. I yelled at him to get back in the car, and she started driving alongside me, telling me to pull up and calling me a bitch. X started yelling back at her, and he directed me to go back to his house. I stayed there for a few hours, and he's just pacing out the front going, if they show up here, it's fucking on. No one's going to lay a hand on you. So he was going to go to bat for me against her. Then comes the camping trip. He ended up driving me to the campsite, and we met up with my friends there. We were all having a good time. We were in the water having fun, and he was cooking dinner. We had the speaker going, music pumping. It was great. See, me and my friends have this way of teasing each other, and the first time X had seen this was on the camping trip. He pulled me aside privately and said to me, "Why are you letting your friends speak to you like that?" I told him it was no big deal, and that we always spoke to each other like that. But he got kind of mad about it and basically insinuated that my friends were bad people. There's another red flag right there. I was dumbfounded. Later that night, we all got out of the water and X handed me a towel to use. It wasn't mine that I'd brought, so I thought he was letting me use his. "Christine, look at the name on it." I looked, and I saw the towel that he had given me belonged to his ex-partner. I tore it away from my body, and I threatened to throw it in the fire and asked him why he still had it. He said, quote, "If you throw it in the fire, I'll never speak to you again." After that, my mood just plummeted. I sat by myself on the end of the beach with my bottle of alcohol, and he kept coming over every 5 minutes asking me if I was alright. I just wanted to be left alone, and him coming over was annoying me so much. The next morning, my depressive episode had set in. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted everyone to leave me alone because I just wasn't in the mood to deal with anything. Everyone started packing up, and after the last of my friends had left, it was just me and X at the campsite. This was the time that everything went to hell. He started yelling at me because I didn't help pack up. This is fucking bullshit. See, because at the time before I got my diagnoses, I just thought I was, depressed and all that. So when I'd go into a depressive episode, I would dissociate and I'd stop speaking, and I just wasn't in the mood to deal with anything. Because of how I was already, I just stopped talking completely. I didn't speak to him the entire drive back to his house. Oh, pardon me. We started putting stuff away when we got back, and I sat down on his lounge. That's when he stood over me and began yelling at me. "Aren't you gonna fucking say something? Are you gonna fucking speak?" He then hurtfully said that he felt obligated to take me camping to keep me happy. I physically couldn't bring myself to speak, and I ended up getting off the lounge and leaving, slamming the door behind me. He came out after me and was like, "Christine," and I turned to him and went, "No, I'm leaving." As I drove home, I began to cry, because that was the first time he had truly raised his voice at me and intimidated me the way he did. At work, one of the boys had asked me what was wrong, because I'd become very quiet and less chatty at work. I told him what had happened, and when X came up to my window, the mechanic had let slip what I'd said. After work, X came to me and basically told me off for telling the other mechanic. I yelled at him that I needed to vent to someone, and that he had asked me what was wrong. We argued that afternoon, and he began to not want me around as often anymore. He began to make comments about my eating habits, and that's when the insults started. It became a cycle. He'd insult me and say it was a joke. I'd vent to whoever about his behaviour. He'd find out about my venting. We'd argue about it. Wouldn't speak to each other for days. One of us would apologise, and then it would just continue. It was also around this time that I started going to therapy, and my therapist started trying to show me that our relationship was getting kind of toxic. But because of how emotionally dependent I was on X, I kept making excuses for him. X began to demand to talk to my therapist, and I'm all like, no, you're not my boyfriend, so you're not talking to my therapist. He was very demanding. I'm like, dang. If I went home sick from work, not long after I would get a text message asking where I was and what happened. It was like he needed to know where I was all the time. Things escalated once again on the 19th of February when I received word that his ex-partner was back in town. See, I always felt guilty for keeping information from him, so I texted him and told him that she was back in town. I went for a drive and I didn't answer my phone for a couple of hours. I was on the road near his house when my gut instinct told me to pull over and check my phone. I had missed call after missed call from him, and I called him back. He immediately started bombarding me with questions. Are you sure she's in town? How do you have this information? Where is she? All these different things. I just told him what I knew, and he just kept on going. He began to yell at something in the background, and I said to him, don't make me turn this car around and come there. I'm literally 5 seconds away from your house. He yelled, do it, and he hung up on me. So, me being me, I followed through with my threat, and I drove to his house. I got out of the car and he was standing on his front doorstep. What the fuck are you doing? I shrugged and said, I warned you. He stormed inside but left the door open, so I followed after him. What happened next, I will never forget. I went inside and I shut the door behind me. As soon as that door shut, he became the most volatile I'd ever seen him. He started hitting items off the shelves, causing things to fall to the floor and making loud crashes. He would slam his fists down on the table. He was carrying on. At one point, he turned around and full force punched the fridge, leaving a huge dent and dislocating 2 of his knuckles. He held up his hand that was turning bright red and said, I can't feel that. How fucked up is that? I was just standing next to the front door, stone-faced, arms folded. I said, are you done? And he sat down on the lounge with his head in his hands. I was staying as calm as I could because I didn't want to escalate the situation further, but on the inside, I was fucking terrified. That was the first time I was truly scared of what he could potentially do to me. He broke down in tears and started going on a tangent about his ex-partner once again. He was saying all this shit to me about missing her, being afraid to go to sleep at night, for fear of dreaming about her, how he thinks about her constantly. See, because of the story he had told me, I was confused as to why he was still so infatuated with her, due to the nature of their breakup the year prior. Again, I won't disclose any details because that is not my story to tell. He then turned it on to me, throwing up his arms and yelling, look around, Christine, is this what you want? Why are you here? Why are you sticking around? I said, sometimes you don't need a logical reason to be there for someone. I'll always be here to support you. I decided to hide the scissors and knives just in case he decided to do something to himself. And he just kept talking about how everyone thought he was a bad person, how everyone thought he was a monster. All this, and I kept trying to reassure him that what he was saying wasn't true. He kept slamming his fist down on the table and I kept yelling at him to stop before I went and hugged him. There was even a point where he told me to grab his wallet off the table, and when I opened it up, I pulled out a folded up picture of him and his ex-partner containing 2 rings. He asked me, When have you seen me smile like that? I kept quiet, but I was thinking to myself that he has actually smiled wider than that while with me. I stayed for hours that night trying to calm him down. He ended up showing me a YouTube channel that belongs to his ex-partner that he was with like years ago, so a different ex-partner. He was showing me everything, so I felt like I could still trust him. By the time I left that night, he looked at me and grabbed my hands. Thank you for coming over. Even though I'd been trying to prove myself to him, the cycle just kept on continuing. But add in him accusing me of lying and using emotional blackmail to see if I was lying to him. Sometimes I would guilt trip him without realizing I'm doing it, and he would lose it at me, and I'd be so apologetic because I didn't realize what I was doing. So basically I learned from other people, and because I'd been guilt tripped so much throughout my childhood, I started learning to guilt trip. And sometimes I do it without realizing I'm doing it, and he'd look at me and he'd be like, Christine, guilt tripping. I'm like, oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes I'd guilt trip him without realizing I'm doing it, and he would lose it at me, and I'd be so apologetic because I didn't realize that I was doing it. I became careful with what I would say around him because I didn't want him to get mad at me. We get to the 28th of February, and X told me he was going to the pub again, but that if I was coming, that he wouldn't be free to speak to me. See, he was going with his cousin and didn't really want him there. Sorry, didn't really want me there. I will admit that I'm very good at playing the field. I'm very good at manipulating and planning things. So, I will admit that, so say there's two people against each other and I'm in the middle, I'm very good at playing both sides and no one knows what side I'm really on, only me. Like, I do that a lot, actually. Yeah, I know that sounds like a bad thing to do, but that's how I protect myself, you know, so, like, I play both sides. So I had invited another one of my friends to come to the pub with me, but she was kind of in a relationship with the same cousin that X was bringing to the pub, so it was kind of like a too far, you know. I did that on purpose so I could get what I wanted. The boys were shocked to see us both. They eventually pieced together that I'd planned the whole thing and that I'd manipulated the situation to work in my favour. We ended up drinking quite a bit and went back to X's house again. But after mucking around for a bit, the conversation turned serious. We were basically giving each other relationship advice. And when the topic changed to me and X started being really rude towards me. My friend literally scolded him. Don't speak to her like that. I don't appreciate it. Christina's like a daughter to me. I won't have you talking down to her like that. I became quite anxious and my hands began to shake. My friend realised and she grabbed my hands and told me to calm down and breathe. The conversation was making me quite emotional and I went and sat on the floor near the door clutching a pillow to my chest. X asked me if I wanted another drink and I said yes, so he got up and went to the fridge. I said in a joking way, yeah, that's what I thought. He turned his head slowly and slammed the fridge shut. You know what? Get off your fat lazy ass and get it yourself. I was taken aback and my mean drunk began to come out. So I'd been the silly drunk before then, but now the mean drunk was starting to creep in. What the fuck did you just say to me? Our friends went quiet as I scowled at him. He began to stammer, trying to say that he was joking, but my anger was rising. I got up to grab my drink and went to sit in the same spot. The conversation continued, but my anger was still simmering below the surface. I don't remember how the topic came up, but we began talking about my sisters. He made a rude comment about both my sisters since he knew them. And one of the things that will definitely make me angry is if someone makes a rude comment about either my sisters or my nieces. I stood up and said, "What the fuck did you just say about my sisters?" He again tried to pass it off as a joke, but my anger was peaking. I yelled at him, "Don't ever say those things about my sisters again. My sisters practically raised me and I will not have you talking about my sisters like that." We left not too long after that, and the next morning I woke up to a text message from X, apologising for not keeping his mouth shut. A couple of days later, I was leaving work and I was talking to another mechanic while I was waiting for X to walk me to my car. When he saw that I was talking to this other mechanic, he came over to us and asked us what we were talking about. I told him it was nothing, and he told me to shut my fat, ignorant mouth then. I got really upset and I left the car park. When I got home, I vented to my best friend about what had happened and how upset he made me. But after a while, I had an attack of guilt for some reason, and I texted him apologizing for my behavior. He said, if you want to make it up to me, take me for a feed. I went to pick him up, and as we were driving, my best friend called me, the call coming through the car Bluetooth. As I was talking, X said to my best friend, "What up, bitch?" I knew he was joking, but my best friend began to lay into him about how he had spoke to me that afternoon. He turned his head slowly, and the look in his eyes gave me chills. "You told her?" I ended up hanging up on my best friend, and when I ended the call, he yelled at me to turn the car around and take him home. He was going on about how he wasn't going to listen, how I was just like all the others, how I lied when I said I was different, how his mum would be disappointed if he told her what I'd done, etc. I kept yelling at him to let me explain, but he just wasn't listening to me. I began to cry because I was so overwhelmed by the situation. I was trapped in my car, having an argument with the man that I was meant to be in love with. After a couple of minutes of silence, he told me in a low voice to pull the car over. I pulled over and we began to talk it out. He made me promise not to tell people anything about him anymore. So he was trying to get me to stay quiet about his treatment towards me. He full on told me that he was scared because I knew all this information about him and I could potentially use that against him. Look, this doesn't count. This is my story. I won't give any details about his previous relationships or his childhood or his family. I'm keeping my promise by keeping those details private, but I won't stay silent about his treatment of me. But still after that, the harsh treatment continued. X was going on a trip to South Australia to see Falling in Reverse in concert. He was going to be gone for 2 weeks and it caused a whole bunch of problems. Before he left, I told him that I was fine with him going, but I wasn't okay if he slept with someone else while he was gone, which he seemed to be okay with, honestly. The night before he left, I was taken to hospital in pain and he was texting me, making sure I was alright. He sent me a video while he was on his way to South Australia and I tried to stay in contact with him. But after a couple of days, I began to not miss him anymore and I began talking to someone else. While he was gone, work became so unbearable and I started arguing with the boss defending X. It was a huge problem and I put my ass and job on the line to help X as much as I could to save his job. See, what had happened was he wanted to use his holiday pay while he was gone on his trip, but the boss came back from a trip. Like, the boss was away when he left, but then the boss came back and was like, where's X? And I'm like, he's gone on his 2-week holiday. And the boss tried to claim that X didn't tell him that he was going, and he's like, nah, I'm not paying him. And I was like, whoa, you can't not pay him. He is allowed to use his holiday pay. Like, you can't do that. And the boss kept arguing with me. I kept arguing with the boss, defending him. The boss was adamant he wasn't going to pay him. So I called X while he was away on his trip. I'm like, boss is saying that he's not going to pay you. So then X called boss and was going off at boss, and the boss came back to me and started yelling at me, being like, why'd you tell him? And then next minute I get another phone call from X, and X is saying that the boss told him that it's my fault, and I'm like, whoa, this is not my fault, I'm trying to sort this out. Like, it was just a huge mess. I was so stressed out because of all the work I was doing to get the problem sorted. I was going between arguing with the boss to getting on the phone with X, back to fixing the payroll, and then arguing with the boss again and to getting back on the phone with X. I was doing everything in my power to fix it. They kept blaming me, saying it was my fault, and both of them were yelling at me when what happened wasn't even my fault, and I was so fed up. I fixed the problem, and did I even get a thank you? No, I did not. By the time he came back from his trip, I was on my way to see my sister hours away for her birthday, so we didn't see each other at all until the next week. He didn't speak to me for some reason, but then the guilt started to eat away at me, and I told him that I was talking to someone else. He seemed happy for me, but then he was bringing it up at every opportunity. Did you see a new man this weekend? Oh, why don't you get a new man to fix your car for you? Like, ugh. I was getting really annoyed. It was like, what, are you jealous or something? I decided to buy a new car and upgrade my old one. X was one of the people who was telling me that I should have kept my old car. I was still attending my therapy sessions, and I'd finally gotten my diagnoses, which X knew about. So I got diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder, social anxiety, binge eating disorder, and PCOS. So I was like explaining to X like how my brain works and things like that, and it was like it was going in one ear and out the other. And also at this point, and I'd also told him that I couldn't sleep properly, so he gave me a bottle of his spray to help me sleep at night. Yeah. At this point, I wasn't going to his house as often as I used to. We get to April, and he just keeps ruining my good mood at every chance he gets. We finish work one day again, and we get into an argument. At this point, I'd stopped talking to the other guy, and I was back to where I started. X then told me mid-argument that while he was away, he slept with 2 other girls. That was my one condition, and he broke it. I was so upset that I left the car park and went up to the hill to be by myself. I was up there for hours, letting myself be bitten by mosquitoes until the sun went down. I was also posting cryptic posts on Facebook, one of them saying how I wish I didn't have emotions, then I wouldn't have fallen in love with him. After this, he texted me on Messenger asking why I was so upset and that we needed to talk. I left him on read. The next day at work, I refused to talk to him. At one point, he came into my office and demanded that we talk after 5 that day. I turned to him and said, "I'm leaving right on 5 today," before turning back to my computer. He lost it, yelling at me right there in my office. "Fucking leave at 5 then. I wanted to sort out our issues, but no, you can leave at fucking 5 then." I was getting so angry that I wanted to turn around and yell back, "Get the fuck out of my office." But I kept my cool and just kept on ignoring him. A couple days later, the boss came to me and told me that X had handed in his 2-week resignation. I thought it was my fault, so I ended up going to him being like, "Seriously? Are you seriously that childish?" We ended up having another argument, and I actually had the urge to hit him. A couple days before he finally left, I said that I wanted to have a conversation with him, and I had my phone in my back pocket, secretly recording the conversation. In this conversation, I asked him whether he cared about me or not, and he just kept contradicting himself with every sentence that came out of his mouth. He said that he cared if my feelings got hurt, but then in the next sentence blatantly say he would verbally abuse me. The day he left, I was a mess. I cried so much that I got sent home from work the next day, and I had a full-blown meltdown. But then my car overheated, and since my best friend was out of town, the only option I had was X. I drove my car to his house, and he just kept huffing and muttering under his breath while he was checking my car. We argued again in his driveway because he kept accusing me of keeping the last of his pay from him, and I had to keep repeating myself that it was out of my hands and that I wouldn't lie to him, because he kept saying that my eyes said I was lying. I told him about my meltdown, and he just said, "That's bullshit, Christine, you having a meltdown because of me." While we were waiting for my car to cool down, we went for a drive to see if his pay had gone in or not. When we pulled up to the ATM, he looked at me and said, "If my pay isn't in yet, I'm going to be very angry." I held my breath as he walked to the ATM. Thank God the pay had actually gone in. We went back to his house where he fixed what he could and told me to come inside for a bit. A couple days later, I was at work and he ended up coming in. Even though he didn't work there anymore, he started working on my car, which was on one of the hoists. He worked on it for a bit before saying he needed to leave, but that he would be back on Monday to work on it. I wanted my car fixed straight away, but he gave me that look and said, "Think about it. You get to see me on Monday." He knew that would get me. He did come back on the Monday, but said that I needed a new coolant bottle because mine had a hole. So he couldn't do anything else to help. The boss gave me a car to use while mine was still getting fixed, and a couple days later I'd met up with X at Aldi so he could give me a packet of smokes. He came up to the window to give me my packet and said to me, "Why are you stalking my friends on Facebook?" I stammered. I didn't know what to say. "My friend texted me asking me who you were and said you'd been coming up on her Facebook." How did they know that? As far as I know, Facebook doesn't say if someone's been looking at your profile, right? "You need to stop doing that. I mean it." He gave me that chilling look before walking back in Aldi's. A week later, he was back. He decided to come back to work for another 3 weeks until his next job was ready for him. I was so happy and my face hurt from smiling so much. That same afternoon, he came up to me and asked me if I was free after work. I told him that the boss had to come to my house with the tow truck to get the car out of my driveway, but after that, I was free. He told me that he had messaged his ex-partner and that he had gotten a phone call from someone claiming to be a police officer, and how he wanted me to come with him to the police station after work and secretly record while he asked the police officers about the phone call. So he and the boss came to my house and X helped put the car onto the tow truck, and then we both drove to the police station. I stayed quiet while he tried to argue with the officers about the phone call he had gotten. He just kept getting told not to message her again and was denied when he asked for a restraining order against her. We both walked out of the station. I was anxious. He was angry. He dropped me home and sped off. Soon after that, we began talking about his 30th that was coming up. I said that I wanted to be there, and he said, "It's not that I don't want you there, it's just that my friends are just as vicious as me. The last thing I want is you getting upset and going into your little bubble away from everyone." I had said that I would come to the pub with his parents, and he said that he would message me when I could come over. The day of his birthday comes, and I get all dressed up for him, and I'm waiting for hours for him to text me. I text him around 4:30, and he said that he wasn't ready yet. Next thing, his mum posts photos onto Facebook. They're already there partying, and I burst into tears. He lied to me. So I went and hung out with another group of friends. This group, X was not on good terms with. At all. They saw how upset I was, and all comforted me and told me that he wasn't worth it. I sent X text message after text message. I called him a liar, told him how upset I was. I was furious. He didn't answer me until the next day. He told me to go fuck myself and removed me as a friend on Facebook. I kept trying to talk to him, but he told me to leave him alone. I was hysterical by this point, and I won't go into detail about what I did next, but I will say that I will have the scars on my wrist for the rest of my life. As soon as my best friend found out what I had done, she told me to block him and delete everything to do with him off my phone. She couldn't believe what I'd done. No one had ever pushed me to that point. I didn't speak to him for over a week, but I was in tears nearly every day, saying that I hated him, but I missed him, and I was a complete mess. I finally unblocked him and texted him, saying that I wanted my stuff back from his house. He told me he would get back to me sometime in the next week. That week came and went, and I was getting impatient, so I texted him again, demanding my stuff back. He then called me and began yelling at me over the phone. "How dare you fucking speak to me like that? What the fuck's wrong with you? You don't talk down to me." We began to argue, so I put the phone on speaker and my best friend recorded the phone call. He was trying to blame me and didn't take any responsibility for what he had done to me. It got to the point where I became quite emotional, and he called me stupid and an idiot for doing what I did to myself, and my best friend had to step in. She told him to bring my stuff before 5, otherwise the police were going to get involved, and she hung up on him. As she hung up, she literally had to lower me to the floor because I was just in hysterics. I had never heard him like that before, and I truly didn't recognize the man that I loved on the other end of that phone call. I was on the floor, sobbing and shaking. He actually did come to my house, and I ran into the kitchen so that he wouldn't see me. My best friend answered the door for me, and he kept trying to call out to me, saying my name in a taunting way. My best friend kept yelling at him to stop, and he finally left my property. When my best friend came back into the kitchen, I was still sobbing, shaking, and I was braced against the fridge and stove. I was terrified. I didn't know what had happened. After that, I got into contact with his ex-partner, and she told me the truth about everything and who he truly was. Again, I won't go into detail, but the things that I heard made me sick to my stomach. I got sent voice recordings that sent chills down my spine. Voice recordings that he told me didn't exist. And then she told me things that actually made me scared for my safety. Considering his history of harassment and stalking, and the fact that he had told his ex-partner, the next girl I get with will end up. I became really paranoid, flinching every time I heard a noise and too scared to answer my own front door. He had been spotted driving near my house, and I was just so tired of living in fear that when my best friend went to the police for a separate matter, I had asked the officer about getting an AVO. He took my statement, and I was in there for 3 hours telling him my story. Because of coercive control laws and that he actually had a file at the police station, they had every reason to fear for my safety, and my AVO was granted. I faced him in court, which was difficult because he tried to fight some of the conditions, much to my dismay. I was anxious, and I was also recovering from wisdom teeth surgery as well, so that made it all the more difficult to sit there in that courtroom. The judge granted me my protection order, and I haven't seen him since then, except for one point when I was out for a walk and he drove past me. But every day still feels difficult. I'm still dealing with my emotions, and it's kind of created a domino effect with some of our mutual friends. Some things remind me of him and I get emotional. I used to be one of those people who would be like, oh, if someone treats me bad, I'll just leave. I won't put up with that. But having experienced it for myself, I completely understand how it's so difficult to leave. This man never took any responsibility for how much he hurt me. And yes, he apologized. But there comes a point when hearing the word sorry just gets old, and you begin to question if they actually mean it. And also it leaves you questioning too, what was real and what wasn't. Considering I was in love with this person, and he made me happy, but he did what he did. Yeah, so there you have it. That's the whole story. And honestly, I'm waiting for the day that he tries to come back. The AVO's only in place for 2 years. He doesn't forget. So I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for the day that he turns up, or, it's what am I meant to do? But yeah, that's basically what happened. So